Welcome to technical session number 39, where we're going to be getting into other operating systems. As we are on 39, we know that it's above 32, which means this is a 10:02 technical session. We already talked about the various versions of Windows we needed to understand, the 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. Now we get to get into other ones we may come across in our daily lives. What am I doing? There we go. All right. So for this particular technical session, we should be able to explain the purpose and context for knowing how to navigate other operating systems, including macOS, Linux. They do say mobile operating systems, but we get more into that. We actually have a whole session just on mobile operating systems. Also, we're going to be able to compare and contrast some functionalities between the macOS and the Linux operating systems, and also give us a little variety of difference that you would see between Linux and Mac, or Linux and Mac versus Windows. So, for this particular technical session, we want to keep in mind adaptability and growth mindset, because some of us may have never seen either of these before we entered this class. And that's okay. That's why we're here. So we kind of had this one up for a little bit when we were talking about the introduction to Windows and stuff like that. But this kind of breaks it down a little bit more. So we got, was it like 41% is Windows 10. Then we have another 32% Windows 7 and 4.5 for Windows 1 or 8.1. And then we start getting into Mac OS, which is only about 3.87 for two different versions. You have another Mac OS 10. Windows XP, still few people out there hanging on. And then we start getting into Linux, 3 and 4%. And then this tiny little sliver right here is those Windows 8 holdouts. They just don't want to give it up. So it just kind of lets you know, overwhelmingly 80-something%, I think it's 84, 85%, it's going to be Windows based. But another 8 or so percent Mac, and then about another 3 to 4% if that's Linux. So other operating systems are kind of growing in popularity. Linux is growing because if you're going to be in the cybersecurity field, if you're going to work with servers, IT, you're going to gravitate towards these systems more often. And Mac OS is just kind of a market alternative, although people did not like it originally. Like when you go back to the 90s and early 2000s with Mac, their operating system wasn't as streamlined and clean as Windows was. It was typically used by people who did graphic arts and architecture, graphic design, stuff like that. That typically was your biggest market for Mac OS. But I guess in the mid 2000s or so, they came out with those multicolored egg computers. If anybody remembers those, like in the blue, the purple, the orange, like all the different colored Macs. That was their first foray to try to get back into the market and become more of a mainstream thing rather than a niche market. And they did okay. But the laptops is where they really kind of set themselves apart. And then eventually the iMacs. So, all right. So moving forward, we're going to be talking about some of the common features that you'll come across with your Mac OS and your Linux operating systems. And then we will talk about some best practices, tools, features, and then we'll get finally into some basic Linux commands. Nothing too crazy, just, a few to kind of get you going. Although we've already started to get a little bit of practice on this working in our Coursera labs, right? So we're starting to learn that sudo and apt-get, all that kind of stuff. We're using those on a little bit of a basis here. See, I see people nodding their heads. They're like, I don't know this stuff. I don't know this stuff. Okay, well, when I mention it, all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, I remember that. So it's there. Just got to develop a little more familiarity with it. All right. So Linux OS desktop. Now, there are a lot of versions of Linux that you can choose from. Some of the most common would be like Ubuntu and Mint tend to be your most common that people will use. If you get into the security field, there's Black Arch and Kali, which are not listed up here, but all of these are typically free. You download them for free, you can use them. You just pay for customer support or service. You know, like if you need IT help or whatever, you would pay for that. So, but they call each of these versions distros. So like if somebody's using Linux, well, what distro are you using, which would be which distribution. And that is shortened to distro. And that's what they mean by that. Which version do you use, Oscar?
Ubuntu.
Ubuntu? Okay. Good deal. All right. Now, you remember we were talking about Android, where each operating system or new update for the operating system for Android was alphabetical order based off some kind of suite, like they would have Nougat, Oreo, or something like that. And so you need to look at the first letter, and that would tell you, you know, if the version you had was older or newer. Well, macOS at first used cats. So they had cheetah, puma, jaguar, panther, tiger, leopard, snow leopard, lion. They went from smaller to larger cats. Eventually they ran out of big cats and they moved to mountains. So you had Mavericks, Yosemite, El Capitan, Sierra, High Sierra, Mojave. And I think we're at national parks now is what they're currently using. So they would, you know, do things like this to let you know which version you're in. Questions on that? All right. All right. Other operating system maintenance that we'll kind of get into: scheduled backups, disk maintenance, system updates, patch management, driver firmware updates, and antivirus. So let's see here. Melody, can you please read us about the Linux operating system?
Backing up data can be scheduled using the rsync utility from the command line, can operate locally and remotely while encrypting the transfer. As with any command line utility, you can create batch files and schedule these backups. The tar and CPIO command line utilities are also used to construct full or partial backups.
Excellent, thank you. So when you're in the command line, you will get more comfortable with Linux as we go through. Some of these commands you will use throughout this process. So to start that process, use the rsync utility, and then you can use the tar and CPIO command line utilities to use to construct full or partial backups. Also, you can do a bit-by-bit copy of hard drives. They also call it a forensic copy by using the DD command in Linux. Are they using California locations, Oscar? For Mac? Okay, thank you. All right. Backing up data on the Mac OS. Let's see here, Joyce, can you please read for us?
Backing up data can be scheduled using the rsync utility as well, but the Time Machine utility backs up the entire Mac. Must be enabled first, then it can automatically perform backups every hour, daily, and weekly. This utility requires booting to a different drive to perform an operation on the drive in question.
Excellent, thank you. So we mentioned this in the previous T session. You know, if somebody calls in and says they're having an issue with their time machine, what operating system are they using? They're using a Mac, because Mac's backup utility is called Time Machine. And if we're going to need to do something to, say, our internal drive, we're going to have to we're going to have to boot to an external in order to be able to do something to our main drive. Not to back it up, we would back it up to an external drive. But if we were trying to recover to it, we'd boot to the external. All right. Sorry, somebody have a question? Nope. Okay. All right, scheduled disk maintenance. In Linux, it's going to be the EXT and EXT4, EXT3 and EXT4 are common file systems to Linux and does not require defragmentation. Thankfully, the way Linux saves to the file system does not require you to do this. We only use defragmentation on mechanical drives in Windows. And I don't think Mac has that utility either. And if you're looking for issues with the disk, you could do what's called FSCK, which is File System Checker. And that will run a check on your system. FSCK would be something you put in the command line. So as you're putting these down, I would identify them as Linux. So FSCK, Linux, File System Checker, just to kind of let you know. App, or in Mac, talking's hard. Apple, similarly, the Apple file system, or APFS, does not require defragmentation as well. You can use the disk utility, verify disk, to verify the health of your hard drive. Do you have a lot of bad sectors? Is the system itself degrading? This is how you would verify these things. I can perform a verification live without having to boot to a different drive, which is exceptionally nice. All of these file systems utilize, instead of using a disk defragmentation tool, on-the-fly defragmentation methods that allow contiguous sectors to be saved together on a drive. All right. Yes, Oscar.
With defragmentation, we're not recommending it for SSD drives, right?
Absolutely not. We only defragment mechanical drives, right? Sorry, I usually mention that at that process or at that point.
Gotcha.
So I've mentioned it when we were doing drives and stuff like that. I just forgot to bring it back up. Thank you for the reminder.
Oh, you did mention it.
No, I'm saying I did it when we did drives. I'm just being like, I didn't remind you guys now. So I try to remind and repeat when something important like that comes up. Thank you. There's no need to defragment an SSD. All right, system updates and the App Store. So in Linux, this can either be done in the traditional CLI or command line interface, or through a GUI tool if you're using the distros Ubuntu or Fedora. So utilizing this tool, it basically goes out and checks if there's any updates for any of the programs that you have, if they're available, and then upgrade if needed at that point. If we're checking for and downloading updates, we would use the sudo, which stands for super user do once, and then apt-get, which goes out and gets our updates and downloads them to the system, the apt-get update. If you remember in the IT fundamentals, I believe you used this command when you were upgrading what was it, VLC. So when you're upgrading the VLC file in the simulation, you use the apt-get update and the apt-get upgrade. What's up?
Oh, Oscar's picking on me, man.
That's messed up. All right. Apple Store. In the Apple Store, that is kind of where that's where you would get your updates for any applications you've already downloaded. You could buy new software through there. You can verify your updates. You can do this automatically if you choose in your software preferences. But if you don't wish to do that, you can always go into the App Store and double check on your own. And set it to check daily, monthly, or weekly, however often you wish it to do so. Questions so far? All right. All right, patch management and driver firmware updates. So thankfully for patch management, Linux and Mac uses a similar system, or similar tool. Same as Windows, you have a System Center Configuration Manager. And you also can utilize third-party tools such as Spacewalk to manage your patches for security or various other things. Some patches you may not want to install because they affect your software you're running, and this would allow you to manage it from that process. All right, driver and firmware update. Unfortunately, with Linux, depending on the distro you're using, this can change from type to type. So during or after the installation of the particular driver or so, update through the Software Update Center. And you would use the Personal Package Archive, or PPA, which are essentially repositories containing drivers that can be easily utilized for Ubuntu. All right. So other thing you can do is you can update through the RPM package specified by the hardware vendor for Red Hat. And all that is, RPM is essentially just a packet management system. And they would build computer software on top of that. For macOS, far simpler. Firmware and driver updates are obtained directly from the Apple support site. You just go to their site, download it. It's simple. But it's not as fun as doing all the command line in Linux, right? All right. Antivirus and anti-malware updates. So they would have specific versions created for both Linux and Macs, just like for Windows. Has anybody here heard the myth that Macs can't get viruses?
Years ago, yeah.
I mean, that was actually one of their commercials for a while, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Macs
Yes.
can't get viruses. And there were two main reasons for that, which one was market share. If you're going to spend a lot of time creating a virus, you're going to want to get as much, return on your investment as possible, right? So are you going to go for the pond that has 85% of the people using it? Or are you going to go for the pond that only had about 6 to 8% people using it? So It's a matter of where you're going to spend your efforts trying to attack systems. So people would attack Windows because they were the big dog on the playing field. They had the opportunity to affect the most users. That's why they went there. The other way was part of how they downloaded and installed programs. They did it line by line. So it was a little easier to catch if something was wrong. That didn't make it was virus proof. It just meant it was harder to inject a virus in a stream of code. But things are changing. The market is changing. You do have viruses rapidly being created for the Mac world and the Linux world. All right. Mac versus Linux. We're going to talk about backup or time machine, restore or snapshot, image recovery, disk maintenance utilities, shell terminal, shell or terminal. Remember that the term shell from yesterday?
Shell talks to the kernel.
Yeah, what is the shell? In the restaurant, what is the shell?
The wait staff.
Wait staff. There you go. All right, screen sharing and force quit. I know what you're thinking. This is a lot of stuff. Are we going to get a chance to practice any of this? Yes. Don't worry, there are test out labs and simulations in Coursera.
We have to do test out labs for Mac.
I don't think there's a test out lab for Mac, but I think they get into it with Coursera a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Thankfully, from the command line perspective, Mac and Linux are pretty much identical. All right, backup or time machine, Linux OS. So backup tools are available for all versions of Linux, thankfully. And using the tar and Scipio command line utilities to construct full or partial backups, depending on how your schedule is going. And each utility essentially constructs a large file that archives other files. So we haven't really got into the different types of backups, like full, differential, and integrated, I think. What was the third one, Rachel? Full, differential. You remember?
Incremental.
Incremental, there we go. Incremental, full, and differential. So depending on the type of backup you're using, would fall under different commands. Here are some of the options you would put with regards to your backup. Do you need to memorize all of these? No. For the A+. You may utilize them with regards to Coursera. With regards to your A+, no. All right, time machine, a little bit simpler. So you go into this GUI tool, the time machine right here. It looks like a clock with a little, refresh button on it. It initially will be off if you have never interacted with it, so you need to turn it on. And then you could select a disk where the backups are going to go to, and then set your options. How frequently do you want to back up your systems? So much simpler interface with regards to Mac. All right. Restore and snapshot. So snapshot essentially creates a volume image of a device at a particular instant without causing interruptions in your service. And then you can restore it back to that point. It's almost like a system restore. To restore that, we would go into the command line, and it would be IV convert command. And then the S augmentation of the IV create command to create a snapshot. So to restore the snapshots, convert to create one, it's IV create space / or S, or -S. Restoring files on Mac. Go into Time Machine, enter the Time Machine, and you'll be taken to the main window where you can navigate, find the folder you need to retrieve, and then you can locate the file or folder and click the Restore button, and Time Machine will copy that file to its original location on your hard disk. Questions or comments so far?
I'm assuming that you can set that to back up to external hard drives, right? With
Oh, Time Machine?
mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can actually set it to back up to multiple drives if you wish,
Okay.
because that's what I do.
Thought you guys were required to buy proprietary stuff, as you guys do all the time. And I'm saying you guys, and you're an Apple guy.
I chose Apple for one very specific reason, and it was longevity of the systems. I got tired of every 2 years buying a new Windows machine and it basically being virtually useless after a couple of years. And then I got into a Mac. I used a Mac for over 10 years without a single hiccup. And then I was like, okay, so now I'm on my second Mac and it just works for me. I do use Windows machines for other things. It depends on what I'm doing. Okay. All right, image recovery. So you use the same technique for both systems, thankfully. It's the same technique as restoring a single file, because what we just talked about over here was you could actually just bring back a single file. You don't have to do a full system recovery. You're just pulling back a single file. This is for the entire system. So recovering the entire image, in Linux OS, you would recover the image using the rsync utility, and then you would restore the entire snapshot, not just a piece of it. And then through MacOS, it is done through the disk utility tool, which you can use the search function called Spotlight and look it up, and then it'll pop up right there for you to use if you wish, if you have a hard time finding it. And along with the backup, the system and the operating system media. Questions so far? Have you gone too far astray yet, Oscar?
I have a question. So
Yes, Daniel.
on Linux, right? When you code in a picture, is a picture gonna pop in the code? You know what I mean?
It will not show up in the command line. It'll show up as like image, whatever the file name is.
Okay.
So it'll show you the file where that image is, but it will not show you the image in the command line.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Is that what you're asking, or did I misinterpret the question?
No, that makes sense. So do you ever see the photo on Linux? When I think of Linux, I just think of like straight up code, no pictures, no time, just straight up code.
I mean, if we go back real quick, I can kind of show you, like, here we go to it. Boom, right here. So this is Linux.
Well, okay.
So This is it depends on which distro you're using. This is Ubuntu, which would operate very similarly to a Windows or a Mac operating system. So you can do the majority of your stuff in this GUI or graphical user interface type setting. What you're seeing in Coursera is the command line, which is another aspect of Linux. Kind of like in Windows, we can go into the command line as well.
Oh, okay, I get it
But
now.
you have typically more need to utilize the command line in Linux than you would in a Windows system.
Makes sense now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So it can be. Go ahead, Greg.
I was just saying there's another piece to that, is that there is a pure, just command line Linux, or there are a few of those, but
Yes.
in those cases, those people don't necessarily, they're not using it for that purpose. You're not looking for a GUI or a photo or something. It's just to accomplish a task.
Exactly.
Or like a web server or something. You will see it on your end as a web user, but the web server would be command line.
That makes
Correct.
sense. Thank
you. Mm-hmm. No, good question. All right. So any other questions?
I feel like it make you cool to just like use Linux command line. It just looks so cool, like you know so much more than everybody else.
That's why we look up Oscar.
That's why Oscar did it,
He looks calm and collected all day because he knows he's got it. All right. With that, I am going to hand it over to Rachel. Do you want me to stop share and you share? Is that easier for you?
I think so.
All right, it's all yours.
Oh, did you go over this slide?
Yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind hearing your take on it. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I think you did a wonderful job.
I'm taking the day off tomorrow. Rachel's got it. I'm just gonna.
Oh boy. Okay, disk maintenance tool, disk utility. Now, of course, I like to have volunteers to read the slides. Is there anybody who would like to volunteer?
Since I've been talking, might as well.
Yes.
All right, disk maintenance tool, disk utility. This utility performs disk-related tasks on macOS, including the creation, conversion, compression, and encryption of disks. Both systems can recover an image using the same techniques as restoring a single file. Below are the methods for recovering the whole image. I wasn't sure if you want me to. Okay, so our sync, or I'm gonna say resync, backs up and stores files. Time Machine backs up and restores files and images. Fisk, file system checker. This utilities verifies disk health and restores images. Tar backs up files. IV creates a snapshot volume.
I appreciate you reading that for me, Greg. You did very well. Now, the rsync, what I found actually originates from the phrasing remote sync. And when I look at FSCK file system checker, I think of FSIC because meaning you may need to check your file system. It could be that there could be a power outage and your computer goes down or your server goes down. You may need to check the file system whether it has errors because of that outage. So that's why I say FSIC just without the I. And tar was derived from tape archival. to mean backup files. And LV create, I think, was derived from creating logical volumes. But this is a slide that's screenshot worthy for you guys. So I'm gonna give you just a minute to take a screenshot. Because you will see some of these functions or these commands later on. Everybody okay for me to move forward? Okay, shell terminal. Who would like to read the Linux OS portion?
I can read it.
Thank you.
Okay, Linux OS. The command line interface in Linux is usually reached through a terminal session. It is in this terminal session that you interact with the shell, the interpreter between the user and the operating system. The most popular shell from Linux today is Bash. Terminal appears when pressing Control-Alt-T. Do you want me to read Mac also or no?
Sure, you can do that.
Okay, Mac OS. The Mac is called terminal and can be found and can be accessed by going to Finder, Device, Application, Utilities, and then Terminal.
So it's just very good to know how to reach the terminal and both operating systems. The Control-Alt-T or the Finder, Device, Application, Utilities terminal. And that's just good information to have in case of a system you may be working on in the future. Screen sharing. Can I have someone read the Mac OS for me?
I'll do it.
Thank you, Gally.
macOS screen sharing. Built into macOS enable you to share your screen with others. While your screen is shared, the user of the other computer see what you see, and they can open, move, and close files as well as restart your system. It requires a virtual network computing connection client.
Thank you,
Gally. Sharing a screen with others can be done through third-party tools or following the procedure as a root user. Change permission to allow users to get added to the session by typing chmod u+s or user VIN screen, which allow a user to run an executable file of a specific owner who is launching the screen. Do you want me to keep reading?
You can keep reading.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I don't think you can hear us because I don't think you heard Gally as well.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You can go, you can proceed.
Oh, okay. So number 2, change the access permission of the screen mode by typing chmod 755 var run screen. Number 3, log out from SSH as a root user. Number 4, type the command screen to start the screen to start the new screen. Number 5, change the screen mode from single user to multi-user. Press Ctrl+A and then type multi-user on and /. Number 6, add the user into the screen. In this case, the user is Jack. Press Ctrl+A and then type ACL name /. Example, ACL ADD Jack. Number 7, the user joins the screen so that both can work in the same terminal by typing the screen -x name
_
thank you, of _screen _session.
Thank you so much. You did
You're
such
welcome.
a good job on that. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dane. It's more complex, it seems, the screen sharing for Linux than it would be for Mac. and it just requires a client
No.
for Mac.
You think?
But I feel like it's a good just informational slide, but it's not necessarily something that will be on the test.
Yeah, you won't be asked to do this on the A+, but it is kind
Right.
of funny. It's like, click here, you're sharing screen on Mac. All right, for Linux, here's 6 pages of commands you need to complete to be able to share your screen. So it is kind of funny.
Yeah, it is funny to me.
But
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to say, but I thought like overall, they say that Linux is just easier to use with commands because the commands make everything so much faster and easier. So, but it's like, it looked like you have to go through so much just to do the commands.
Well, some people, when they learn that language, they learn it quick. They learn the programming.
Okay. Because I started getting interested in it and then I saw the commands and I'm like, maybe not.
What's the fastest way to learn a language?
Practice?
Immerse yourself in it.
Oh,
That way you're forced to have to learn it. I'm not saying go delete all operating systems off your computer and just put Linux on there and just like try to figure it out. That'd be a little extreme. But
You think?
encouraging yourself to use it or forcing yourself into that situation is one of the fastest ways to learn.
That's
yeah,
very true.
I'll definitely give it a try.
Yeah, I think you should. I think I'm going to try it myself.
Mhm.
A key command in here is the change mod, but I think we're going to see that on the next slide, or not the next slide, but another slide after that. Okay, force quit. The Linux OS, this is an important command to know. Can someone read the slide for me?
I'll read it. The kill command will force quit a program. Press Ctrl plus ATL plus T to open a terminal session, then type PS, see below, then kill PID in bracket example kill 4901.
So in Linux, we use the process ID, that's the PID. So if you look in the image that appears below, you see there's different PID numbers. There's 4884, 4887, 4901, and 4942. So you could potentially use kill in any one of those process IDs to make that quit. Can someone read the macOS for me?
I'll do that. Waiting.
Yeah.
Okay. Used to stop Mac OS, used to stop an unresponsive application. Choose quit from the Apple menu or press Command plus Option plus ESC.
Yes. So quit from the Apple menu or press Command plus Option and Escape.
Escape. Oh Lord.
I would take, no, thank you for reading that for me. I would take a screenshot of this slide too.
Okay.
Because it is something you may see on the test. Okay, moving on. Mac OS features. Who can read the features for me?
I can read it.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca.
In macOS Features, multiple desktops missions controls switch between apps desktops called Workplace Switch in Linux, Keychain or Password Management System, Stoplight or Search search of documents, images, apps, and etc. iCloud, a small amount free, but anything beyond that requires payments. Gestures, touch screen using multi-touch. Finder, browse through folders and find files, disks, apps, and etc. Remote disk, access files on the disk in another machine. Dock, set of icons. Bootcamp, choose OS as you boot.
Thank you, Rebecca. Another slide that's screenshot worthy, definitionally, especially for knowing things about the Mac. The boot camp is where you can decide whether to choose you're booting into Mac or you're booting into another operating system like Windows.
Although in real life, you would probably use a system called Parallel, which is a much more user-friendly version of that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, basic Linux commands. Please take a screenshot of this because you need to know all of these.
I'm hearing the theme here. I think we probably need to take this whole thing and just memorize the whole thing.
Only 95% of it.
So CD, change the current directory. Change mod or chmod, change the file permissions. Chown or chown, change the file owner and group. CP for copy files. LS, display the contents of a directory, or you can call that list. mkdir, make directory, that's creating a directory. MV, rename a file and move the file from one directory to another. RM, like remove, delete files. And PWD, display the current directory, or in other words, print working directory is what it stands for. So display the current directory. Everybody get their screenshot?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, here's another one, screenshot worthy. DD, copy blocks of data from one file to another, used to copy data from devices. grep, search for regular expressions in a text file or a string of characters. apt-get, downloads files from the repository site. And PS displays a list of currently running processes. Shutdown Linux. VI is the visual file editor. All good to know. And just a couple more. Okay, anyone like to read the commands here? Oscar, you want to? I missed your hand last time.
That's great. Basic Linux commands. Password, change the password. Su starts a new shell as another user. The other user is assumed to be root when the command is invoked without any argument. Sudo allows you to run a command as another user, usually the root user.
Yes, thank you. So super user or SU is super user. That's more like an administrative role. And we see SUDO, that's super user do once, and that's to do like one command administratively. So you definitely want to remember those two, su and sudo, the difference, and also password.
Please do not get password confused with print working directory.
Yes.
I promise you, if you get a Linux command question and it has to do with one of those two, both of them will be in the answer. I promise you.
Yes.
It's the
Very
first
true.
thing I thought of when I saw it.
Very true. Yes, PASSWD. Okay, basic Linux commands. U for user, and you have operations or actions like to add, read in a group, minus to remove for write permissions. O for others, equal to assign, X execute, A for all, S for set user ID. I'll just take a screenshot of this. Okay, let's see what we have next. Oh, some questions. Explain the purpose and context for knowing how to navigate other operating systems, including macOS, Linux, and mobile operating systems, and compare and contrast features and functionalities of the macOS and Linux operating systems. So this is what we have provided for you guys in this session, and that will end this
Can we go
session.
back with the questions with the answer? We can see what we miss.
We got to retake it if we do, but yeah.
Oh,
Let's finish this and then we'll go back to it. Are you done?
So you want me to stop share?
No. If you're done reading, and we can.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll stop recording.